is Christopher Bonanno, and we're back for another Observability Expert Insight series where we're going to be talking a lot about how to get seamless log insights from connecting Splunk AppDynamics to Splunk Core, and basically it drastically improves your APM troubleshooting. A lot of times you either have performance data or you only have log data, where if you are able to bring those things together, it's a much better experience for you and reduces the time that you spend. Instead of grappling between two different platforms, having something that can easily bring you back and forth and aggregating the data is going to drastically improve your MTTR, which is your mean time to figuring out the root cause. So in today's session, we're going to go over a quick overview, and it's more a diagram showing you kind of what we have involved, and we're kind of a little bit more on the product, and it's going to be probably a review for a lot of folks, but for those of you that are newer to AppDynamics, it'll be some really good exposure for you. And then we'll hop into the requirements, and from there we'll be able to understand what is actually all involved in setting this up, and then we'll go into the actual implementation steps, and then we'll demo those. In the demo, we're going to go over a kind of setting up a demo application, but for some security reasons, there's some fields that I can't show. So after that, we'll go into something that's already instrumented and been kind of collecting data and stuff for a while, and then we'll be able to go over some use cases there. And then lastly, we always want to hear your questions. So if you have any along the way, please feel free to drop them into the chat or the Q&A. I forgot to mention earlier, I do have some friends and colleagues here that are going to be able to help answering those questions, whether you put them in the chat or in the Q&A. Yes, and I just saw, Christian, your answer or your question there. Yes, it will definitely be available to view later. Both, if you registered for this, you'll actually get a link, and then you'll also be able to watch it on our YouTube page, which I'll give you the link for in the end as well. All right, so as I was saying, if you guys have questions along the way, feel free to ask. I have two panelists on here that are going to be helping with that. So if it's something that I can't get to, they can. And then if it's easier to have a discussion about it later on, we can do that during the Q&A. All right, let's get going. So this is a little bit better for those of you that are, inexperienced or unfamiliar with AppD. AppDynamics supports an end-to-end view of your application's performance by using a combination of agents. You have things out in the front end. So your EUM is going to be end user monitoring, your BRUM, your MRUM, synthetics. Now that's basically EUM for a browser, for a mobile app, and then synthetics and IoT. And then in the background of that is your APM, your applications that are actually servicing all the calls coming in from the front end where your user is interacting. So it'll probably, maybe it's multiple services running, in unison, or asynchronous calls going out to databases and file systems. That information is already getting sent over to Splunk AppDynamics and allows you to kind of follow along and follow the red and start diagnosing what's going on. But sometimes those log messages come in weird, or maybe if you don't have a strong standardization, maybe some of the error messages aren't coming in at all on the code level. So then you would have to normally go and start digging into logs on the actual application server, or jot down the time, jot down whatever identifying information that you can from one, and then go into Splunk Core and start looking it up. And now when I say Splunk Core, I'm talking about the either Splunk Cloud or Splunk in Splunk Enterprise, which is the on-prem version, or self-managed. And when you have that, it's more for the log analytics. So I'm assuming a lot of times that you're kind of familiar with both of these things, but I will try to break it down a little bit where I can for those of you that are fresher or newer to this. lastly, what I just want to tie together is that not only is all of this information going into AppDynamics, but you would also be able to quickly get over to Splunk Core and start looking into the logs without having to do those extra steps that I mentioned of jotting down and manually going and searching and finding what correlates. This kind of brings it all together. So it's a much easier experience for you, the IT professional, making sure that everything's running for your customers, for your company, to make sure that they can support the loan processes or e-commerce or whatever it is that you guys are running. So this is kind of what it would do. Now, in the context of where you would see this button pop up in AppDynamics, you would be able to see it under the main application. You would also be able to see it under the tiers level, also the node level if you're actually clicked into the node, and you would also see it in the business transactions so far. And this is what that button would look like. And then when you do that, when you actually click on that button, it's fantastic. No matter what context you're in on the AppDynamics side, it'll automatically aggregate that data for you in Splunk, and it'll pop up another window, or it'll pop up another tab rather in your browser, and then you'll be able to start digging around in the logs with the relevant information needed, with the correct context needed. Sorry, a little wordy there, but it becomes very powerful, especially when you guys are trying to really figure out how to diagnose something quickly, and all these needless steps at 3 a.m. The easier the better, so you can get back to sleep, right? And then when you're having those logs being forwarded into Splunk, you're also able to jump over into the Splunk side and run extra analysis outside of what is just connecting in between the two. So really bridging that gap, bringing the tools together, making it a seamless, easy way to troubleshoot things. Like I said, getting more sleep. I was SRE for a long time, so I know the struggle. And now the requirements for this is going to be, obviously you're going to need licensing for both Splunk as well for AppDynamics. And the cool thing is so long as you have that, this extra little integration, it's free. So I would, as a previous admin also, I would recommend that you start out small and build up and see if there's anything that would be infringing if you have some sort of ingestion license modeling with the Splunk Cloud or Splunk Enterprise that you're running. And then, because it's going to create extra metadata, it's going to add things to the indexer. After some time, it should start to lower, but initially when you first are loading something in there, pay attention to your usage. If you're a Splunk admin, it's probably more important to you. If you're an AppD admin or an app owner, you're going to kind of just hand off to those other teams or other groups, and then they might ask you stuff like this, and you'll have a prepared answer. And then obviously you'll need a Splunk universal forwarder. Versioning is important on that, and the type of applications that are supported are Java, .NET, and Node.js at the moment. And it does require that you have the AppDynamics agent of 24.7 or higher. And then also you need to have a newer version of both the SaaS controller the AppDynamics, the virtual appliance, which is kind of self-hosted, or SaaS. Either one of those will work. The legacy on-prem, it does not work currently, but it's something to kind of keep your eye on. And then also make sure that you're running those correct versions of both, or either rather. All right, and then let's go more into the application side. So what kind of logging is supported right now? So as of today, you have, the Java agent, .NET, and Node.js, and then these are the supported logging frameworks that you can use. If you have a custom, thing, it might not be picked up unless you're using one of these already. So let's go ahead and, so in terms of what you're going to actually be doing, first of all, you're going to need, and this is kind of the flow that we're going to go as well. So we're going to create a Splunk service account for the integration. And then we're going to go into the universal forwarder and make sure that we update the indexes for the in the inputs.conf. From there, we would need to go over to the AppDynamics side and configure the agents. The agents, there is something that you have to add in under the config file, and then you would also need to make sure that you're adding the correct information to be logged in the correct pattern. And I'll definitely show you these things, so it'll be a lot easier once you get into it. And then we would also need to go into the AppDynamics controller and then not only do the integration, but there's also a node property that we put into. And I say node property, but it could be a tier property, it could be a node property, or an application level property. If that doesn't make as much sense to you, it's probably because you might not have that level of access in the AppDynamics controller. So, I'll show this going through, but you might end up needing to rely on using or working with your team, or your maybe you have a shared services team. Whoever's adminning AppD will be familiar with it. All right, and then we would also need to make sure that you have some connectivity. There is connectivity involved. I will send out the link for the documentation pretty soon, where it has all of the IP addresses and ports that would be involved. If you're running enterprise, enterprise is, you would need AppDynamics to be speaking to that enterprise. You might have to open up some stuff. If it's going, a SaaS controller, AppDynamics controller going out to Splunk Cloud, you might want to set that up in terms of on the actual controller itself on the Splunk controller side. You would actually add a IP range that's in the docs. I have an enterprise one to show you, so that's why I feel the need to explain that a little bit more. It's basically, in summary, it's going to be a little bit different if you have enterprise versus you have Splunk Cloud. Now, if you have Splunk Cloud, you go into the settings, you're going to create an inbound, basically allowed IP addresses. I'm not going to have that to show you today on this call, so do check out the links to the docs that we're going to send out. And then if you have enterprise as well, same thing would apply for cloud. You always have some sort of networking and connectivity things that you have to, the application not only has to be able to send things to Splunk, but also AppDynamics, the controller, needs to be able to get out to Splunk as well. All right, so let's get into the demo. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and start out with actually, we need to go in here. Now, this is our Splunk Enterprise. It is a nice little demo environment. So let's go ahead and check out what we would need to do. So first of all, we are going to need to create a role, and you do that by hitting new role. Now, I already have one, so for sake of time and keeping this a little bit shorter and spending more time in the demo, let's go ahead and jump over here, and then we're going to see, this is for inheritance. You're not going to need to worry about that. Capabilities is going to be the important one, and then the main things that you need in here is, now this it seems this role has a little bit more, but we need to edit token. Let me see if I can, one of these here. So this one here, edit tokens own. And then we also need search, this one here. Those are the two main ones. You know what? I just realized this is probably really small for you guys. So let me make that a little bigger. So let me show this again. Sorry about that. So edit tokens own and search. Now we added a couple extra ones while we were messing with it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's anything for you guys to have to worry about. All right. Let's go ahead and keep going. Now for indexes, let's go ahead and check out in here. Normally for indexes, you would have an application in here that you would want to assign it to. This is the one that technically I would want to set it to, but for sake of, troubleshooting and, I might be setting up multiple things, your admin might just want to do all non-internal indexes for now. And then once you start getting things being pumped in there, then you can go back and refine it. But it just depends on what your environment's like and how much stuff is on here. So obviously, if you're creating a service account with certain roles and you're able to do a search across everything, that might go against security compliance. So obviously, stay within the confines of, being secure and not getting yelled at by your peers. So in this case, I would want to probably just collect this one, but in considering this as a non-prod environment and something that it's like more of a sandbox, I'm just going to hit this one. Either one of those will work for you. So the specific app that you're indexing or all non-internal indexes. All right, restrictions. We're not going to do anything in here or need to worry about anything. Resources, we do. On the resources side, we do have to make sure that these are all set to 0. And then we also do need to make sure that and this is spelled out for you. You can copy and paste in the documentation, so don't worry and you don't have to go get a pen and start writing it down or anything. But you do need to make sure that you have the correct values. So this one, it has 259.2000. This one has the 777.6000, and it is meaning seconds ago. And it's basically, the maximum time that the searches can do with the role. And it's meant to give it enough time for the AppD controller to, have enough time to do the queries for you, doing those aggregations, etc. So very important to make sure that you do these correctly, though. All right, let's go ahead. And now that we have a role created, now we need to set up an account that's actually using this new role. So let's go back up to settings and go to users. And then again, you're going to normally hit the new user. And then you're going to make sure that you have the correct role assigned to it. You're not going to use any other ones except this one. Since I already have one, it's a little easier if I just kind of show you from here. And nothing special. It just needs to have the correct thing selected. Actually, yeah, and then you can see that it has it right there. I didn't see it when I clicked in there though. Let me just. Oh, my bad. These are the ones that are already selected and assigned. Okay, just checking. All right, so from here, we would hit the save. Oh, okay, so we already created a role. We already created a user, and we made sure that it has our new role to it. So from here, let's go ahead and jump into where our application lives. And we're going to start messing with the forwarder. So now this is a sandbox app that we were toying around with, and it's great for, I'm sure you guys have messed with Pet Clinic before. So if you guys have a Pet Clinic version out there, which is an open source on GitHub example application running Spring Boot, this is pretty much how you would set it up. But this is something that more the Splunk admin would be doing. They probably already have these deployed on the universal forwarder, and then they would want to go into the inputs.conf to actually come in here and set up the indexes for the application. So we would be coming in here and setting these ones up, which gives not only the app name, but you're also giving the tier name. And then obviously if you have more tiers, you can add them to that list or kind of grab them all. And this is where you would do that on the Splunk Universal Forwarder. Now, if you have a team that's doing it for you, at least you kind of have a base information or a base idea of how to tell them what to do next. Here, and let me, again, make that zoomed in a little bit more for you. All right, and then while we're in here, we're actually in the same place as the source code of the application. And this is where we would also be setting up, making sure that the log back information is correct. And really, it should already, for each technology, whether it's .NET, Java, or Spring, or Node.js, there's going to be different things for each one of those. So definitely pay attention to which one you need in the documentation. This is a great example for Spring. Now, the things that we added were these ones here. So the things starting with AppD are what we added. Here, let me just, since I made it so big, just do word wrap, even though I know that's a sin to a lot of you guys. Now, we would just want to add that context in here for the appd. Now, this makes sure that this pushes, the agent will push the information into the controller, or I mean, into the indexer, and it'll actually start, coming in appropriately. If it's not put in the correct pattern when it goes to do a search from pressing that button and you're expecting aggregated results, it might not come in correctly. So make sure that you have this done correctly and per the docs. All right, so now that we have set up everything on the Splunk side, and then we also went into the universal forwarder and updated the inputs.conf, then we would also want to make sure on the application side that the logging is set up correctly to come in with the correct pattern. And now from there, we want to jump over into AppDynamics. And this is where we start to integrate on this side. Now, again, for security purposes, if I start loading all this stuff up, I'm going to have to, with this being a live session, it's a little more restricted. So depending on if you have Splunk Cloud or Enterprise, it has different criteria for you, considering you can control the port specifically if you're the one running it, and you just set all this stuff up and make sure that it has that connection. Obviously, you need to have connectivity too, so that if you're running the appliance, you'd have to maybe log into it, that image, and actually do a curl command out to the Splunk, whether it's in the cloud or if it's an enterprise. You would just want to make sure that you have that connectivity, and all of the IP addresses, all of that connection information is all listed in the docs. I don't want to inundate you with it all here. And then from here, we're going to go actually into, once you have this integration set up, you're using the information that you just set up on the Splunk side, then you're going to go into the actual application that is going to be using it, or that's going to be indexing and ingesting logs in, so that you have that connectivity. And then you're going to want to go to the properties, basically. So in this case, I prefer to do it from the actual tier. And now these are like node properties. You can do it from the application side. There's two options on the documentation. And really, though, I really like picking the tier, because not all of the tiers are going to be required. So to enable something that you don't need on everything, if that's the case, then do it from the application. You don't have to sit there and go tier by tier. That'd be silly. But in this case, I want to show you what I more see people do and what I've done more in the past. So we're going to go ahead and convert this to using custom configurations. And then out of the box, the property that we are adding does not actually exist. Right now, I have it because we've created it. Why not?
Chris, it's on the node level in this case. If you go into the web tier and then go into the node.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so we had it set up on node. My apologies. So technically, this same one, though, you can add it either on the tier level or the node. So that's kind of where I got mixed up there, because this one is, you can use it on either one. I wouldn't do it. It's not necessary to do it on both. I would either do it on the application or tier personally. If you want to start out small and just to make sure that it's working, you can do it from the node. And this is what you would create. So you would create, again, let me make it not so micro for you to see. You would do enable log metadata enrichment. And then I typically prefer to write in a description. Anytime there's a box that I can put something in as a best practice, let other people know what you're doing. I added it, the date, and me, who did it. And then you're going to pick Boolean, and then you're going to hit true. Now, what does that look like if you're actually creating it from scratch? You would just hit this plus sign, put that in here, your description, drop this down to Boolean, and then, this would be true, save, boom. And then if you ever want to just disable it without actually deleting it, you can just go back and hit this drop down saying false. This is node properties is a little more advanced on the AppDynamics side. So maybe some of you guys have not seen this. It's more for the AppD admins, but if you're an AppD admin or if you have privileges of this level on your application, this will look familiar to you. But don't get nervous that you don't see it in here. It is something you have to create it, whether it's on the application side, the tier side, or the node side, you would have to create this. And again, the same value that you would put on node is the same as on tier. You would just grab all this, put it on the tier level instead of doing it on the individual tier level. All right. And it is different for the application one. So pay attention on the docs. All right. So now we have everything set up, and let's go ahead and see what we can be doing with it. Now, this is a much busier app. I figured instead of showing you the sandbox one, we were kind of walking through all of the configuration steps for. Let's get something that actually has some meaningful and good data, and a lot's going on. So let's go ahead and we're going to increase the time range that we're looking at. We do see some business transaction health issues coming in, but just to kind of show you navigation wise, what I mentioned earlier. Now I'm on a base application level, and this is where I can click on this button right now. It'll open up another tab, and from that tab, it'll have aggregated data about the application from this point and everything that it is associated, that you have it turned on for underneath it. Now, if you start drilling down into the tier, same thing could be said. I can hit this. It'll bring up all the information for this tier, and it'll be aggregated even in my search on the Splunk side. And then same thing. I know this seems a little redundant, but getting familiarity with your navigation obviously is very helpful if you plan to use something. So let's just find a quick, something that's getting traffic, I suppose. Here, let's get out of that one. Those ones are massive. There we go. And then again, as long as this lights up, you can get in there. It seems like maybe this node is ramping down, and probably a new one's going to spin up. So it does disconnect when the node is down. But as soon as you go to another node that is lit up, you would be able to have that and click into it just the same way. At that point, though, if you have something that's constantly going up and down, it makes more sense to just do it from the node level or from the tier level anyways. So, me personally, I'd rather go and click this and see, even if something is down or up, I'd have it all there aggregated. And then if I want to dig in deeper, if I find a specific issue and I need to get to the node level, I can do that, or adjust the search that it brings up from the tier level one. All right. And then also business transactions. When you actually go into any one of these business transactions, it brings you to its own little dashboard representation showing you the calls that are being made. And then it also, again, you can see it from the application, the tier, and the node, or just the specific calls being made within all the nodes of this tier that are related to the add to cart. So the add to cart business transaction, everything's going to get aggregated. And we're going to actually go into the Splunk side of things to show you. I just kind of wanted to show you where you would see these buttons light up within the controller. It is very, very fun and cool. Every time I see it, my old SRE, pains start bubbling up, and I'm remembering, oh man, this would have been so nice. So let's go ahead and, we can assume that there's an issue going on. Looks like add to cart. We were just in there. I could have just stayed there, but I'm going to go ahead and click this add to cart. And can you bring me to okay. Oh, there was a little message in the way. My bad. All right. So I'm going to go over to the transaction snapshots, and then we're going to, let's find things that are really messed up. So let's go to slow and error transactions. Honestly, this top one already kind of looks like a good candidate. So now, those of you that are less familiar again, or just as a quick reminder, if you have a gray little marker here, that means that it contains a partial call graph. as opposed to if it's blue, you actually have a full call graph. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the one with the full call graph. And now this is really handy where, maybe these errors aren't coming in as clearly over here, especially where I was before. These errors, it was always, they didn't have very good standards for errors where, I'm sure a lot of where you guys are, you probably do. So that will be helpful for you. And you're probably already getting a lot of really good use of just seeing these potential issues listed off. Definitely seems like, this is, a good a good indicator of what's going on. But from here, now this is the only other one that I didn't show you. Where under more details, you can actually go to this view logs in Splunk. And let's go ahead and do that. All right. So now if you can tell, it's actually associating with the specific GUID, which is associated with the business transaction. Or actually, this is actually for the business transaction of that specific call that we were looking at. So this is everything related to it. And it's saying basically the table doesn't exist. So while it's putting it in there, but was this easy to see on the AppDynamics side? Not really. It didn't spell it out for you. We were getting JDCB or JDBC exception issues, but we couldn't necessarily tell exactly what it was very easily. Where normally you would be going into the logs and you'd have to actually, go on to well, I mean, if you didn't have Splunk, right, you'd have to actually go onto that server, go into the applications logs and try to find something around the same time frame that you see AppDynamics. So that way you can basically bring them together, bring out the explanation of what's going on and affecting your performance by looking at the logs after the fact, where, APM and observability is usually more tasked with not only helping you during a reactive situation, but also being proactive. Where if you have Splunk and AppDynamics already set up and already pointing at some applications, bring them together and make your life easier. Get more sleep, create better apps, make sure your users are getting better experience. And that's the beauty of full end-to-end monitoring. And AppDynamics has always been a focus of it, and bringing now AppDynamics under the Splunk umbrella and getting its integration into the Splunk core where you're able to look at logs. Very powerful integration. All right, so that is our demo, and I wanted to leave some time for Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, just let us know in chat and we can, let me see if it lets me. It does let me unmute. In the recording, I will, if you come off of mute and you want to ask your question, I will cut that out in the recording that gets loaded to YouTube. No attendees information will be on the recording. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in unless, can you see the Q&A section, guys? You see anything in there? It's hiding it from me. I can get into the chat. I can see the attendees, but it's hiding it from me. And
there's zero in the Q&A.
Okay. Otherwise, if you guys have, or you guys can raise your hands if you want to be taken off of mute and ask a question too. Well, all right. I'm going to assume that this was very clear and you fully understand.
Chris, one just came in.
Okay. Do not see it. Do you mind reading it off, Mark?
I got it.
Yeah. Oh.
Or Calvin?
You got it, Calvin.
Okay. The GUID is the GUID AppD GUID or application GUID. So the actual answer to the question is AppD GUID because it allows it to add that GUID to the transaction to follow it through the flow.
So Naveen asked, how does it get logged in the application logs? When Chris showed the logger the pattern, the AppDynamics agent passes through that GUID within the logger itself, and then uses the pattern that you set to put it into Splunk, and then uses that metadata to connect between AppD and Splunk. Chris, I don't know, or Calvin, if you want to add to that.
That was good.
Does it make sense to the requester though?
Yeah, he responded yes.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions? Good questions, by the way, folks. I appreciate the engagement and the questions. Shows you guys are listening. You just want to clear, and then when you ask questions, it clarifies things for everybody else that might not want to ask the question. All right. Are you guys seeing any others come in? I only see the chat and it does not. Here, let me see. Can I?
Don't see any other questions. Excuse me.
All right. I thank you guys for the questions. And now this one that we did today, in addition to a bunch that we have already recorded, including short videos, a little how-tos, follow along demos, is on our YouTube page. It's the youtube.com at Cisco Observability. We are the Cisco Observability customer success engineers. And now a lot of the content that we create is from your guys' feedback. So if you guys have any feedback on, this session or anything else in terms of what you guys would prefer in terms of delivery, in terms of, content that you're having trouble finding, let us know. You can drop it into the chat now, or you can add it to the comments later on YouTube, or shoot us an email. However you want to do it. You can even also submit a call a consultant, which is our way of engaging with you guys. If you guys have a question, just go under, instead of actually just putting in a support ticket. Obviously, if you have a support issue, put it in there. But if it's more around enablement or a quick clarification, you can always put in a call a consultant and ask us, and we'll engage with you and sit down with you and kind of go through it. Or if you have an account team already assigned, however you want to engage with us, feel free to. We're here to help. Otherwise, check us out on YouTube, like, subscribe, tell us what you need more of, and we'll keep that information coming out to you. Thank you all for joining, and I really appreciate the engagement and as well the help from both Kelvin and Mark for being my panelists. And I won't hold you guys up anymore. Have a good rest of your day.